Welcome to the Explainer. Every single website you've ever been to is built on this really simple foundational language. But just like any language, it has its own grammar. So today, we're going to learn the basic grammar of HTML so you can finally stop just copying and pasting code and actually start speaking the language of the web. So, you've probably seen a little snippet of code like this a million times. Hello world. But what are you really looking at? It's not just some text on a screen. It's actually a structured set of instructions that a browser reads. And to really get how it works, we have to break down its grammar. All right, every language has its rules, right? Its grammar. And HTML is no different. If you want to build anything on the web, you've got to master these three core concepts. Think of them as the absolute building blocks: elements, tags, and attributes. They're like the nouns, the punctuation, and the adjectives that bring a web page to life. Okay, let's start with the big picture, the element. An element is the whole instruction, the entire unit. So if you want to tell the browser, hey, this thing right here is a main heading, the whole shebang, from that opening H1 to the closing H1 and all the text in between, that is the element. It's the complete thought. So if the element is the complete thought, then what are the tags? Well, the tags are basically the punctuation. They're the little markers inside those angle brackets like H1 and H1 that tell the browser where that thought begins and where it ends. You can think of them like bookends that give the content its actual meaning. And this slide just nails the analogy. The element is the entire sandwich, the whole thing. The tags, they're just the slices of bread. It's a simple way to remember it, but it's so important. The content, the filling of the sandwich, is part of the element, not the tags themselves. Okay, so we've got our basic structure down with elements and tags. That's great, but what if we want to add a little more detail? What if we need to describe our elements a bit more? Well, that's exactly where attributes come in. So attributes are these extra bits of information that you slot directly inside the opening tag. They act like modifiers. An attribute doesn't change what an element is. A paragraph is still going to be a paragraph, but it can totally change how it behaves or what it does. And this quote right here breaks it down perfectly. A person is a person, right? But an attribute like tall or short gives us way more information about them. It's the exact same idea in HTML. A p tag is just a paragraph, but an attribute can give it a specific ID or a style, adding this crucial layer of extra detail. A perfect real-world example is the title attribute. Look at this. It doesn't change the text of the heading at all, but what it does is add this hidden piece of information, a tooltip that only pops up when you hover your mouse over it. It's a super simple attribute, but it adds this whole new layer of interactivity. Pretty cool, right? All right, so we've got our grammar, elements, tags, and attributes. Enough talk, let's put this into practice. We're going to take these pieces and actually start putting together the skeleton of a real web page. Pretty much every web page is built in this exact order. You always start with the structure, using those heading tags to create a logical outline, just like you would for an essay. Then you add the substance, the actual content inside your paragraph tags. And finally, you make it part of the web by adding links. Just remember, structure, content, connection. Now, it's really tempting to look at heading tags and just think of them as a way to make text bigger or smaller. But that's a huge mistake. Their real job is to create the structure of your page. Things like search engines and accessibility tools totally rely on this structure to understand your content. The H1 is your one and only main title, and everything else has to flow logically down from there. Okay, here's a classic trip up for beginners. You can hit the Enter key 100 times in your code editor, and guess what? The browser will completely ignore it. That's because HTML collapses all white space. So if you actually want a line break, you have to explicitly tell the browser to make one using a tag like BR. And this right here is the ultimate example of why attributes matter so much. The anchor tag, the A tag, is supposed to create a link, right? But without that href attribute to tell it where to go, it does absolutely nothing. It's just text. That one required attribute gives the tag its entire purpose. Then you can use an optional one, like target, to tweak its behavior, like making the link open in a new tab. So we're talking about all these tags and attributes, and there are literally hundreds of them. You're probably sitting there wondering, how on earth does anyone remember all of this stuff? Well, I've got good news for you. They don't. This is the question that every single person asks when they start learning to code. It feels totally overwhelming, like trying to memorize the entire dictionary. But that's just the wrong way to think about it. The answer is you don't. Seriously, no developer, not even the most senior engineers, has every single thing memorized. The real skill isn't about memorization. It's about mastering the art of looking things up efficiently. See, instead of trying to memorize, you learn how to use the ultimate cheat sheet, the Mozilla Developer Network, or MDN. And listen, this isn't just some random blog. This is the official, most comprehensive documentation for all web technologies. It is your single source of truth. It's a developer's superpower. I love this quote because it captures the most important mindset shift you can make. Tutorials are awesome for getting you started, for introducing concepts, but becoming a real developer, that happens when you learn how to read the primary source, the documentation itself, to solve your own problems. And this is why it's so powerful. A tutorial might show you 2 or 3 attributes for a tag. MDN will show you all 20 of them. It gives you practical working code examples you can use, and crucially, it'll tell you if a tag is deprecated, which is a fancy word for obsolete and you shouldn't use it anymore. A 3-year-old YouTube video is never going to tell you that. So, after this whirlwind tour of HTML's basic grammar, what are the most important things you should walk away with? Okay, let's lock it in. First, master the grammar, the relationship between elements, tags, and attributes. Second, remember that some tags, like our link tag, are basically useless without their key attributes. And third, and this is truly the most important one, stop trying to memorize everything. Your real goal is to get good at being resourceful. Make MDN your best friend. Look, you now understand the fundamental grammar of the entire web. And this isn't just about code. It's about learning how to structure ideas and communicate them to the world. It is the key that unlocks absolutely everything else. So the only question left is, now that you know how to speak the language, what are you going to build?